Right, good afternoon. Thanks for coming today. Today in this little PD, this little PLC, we're going to be discussing formative assessments, how we can better use those formative assessments to get to a true checks for understanding and hopefully culminating in some better summative scores. What we're calling this is formative on the fly, how to get immediate feedback from your formative assessments. So for our agenda, today we're going to look at our vision statement like we do in every PLC that we have. Why is this topic important? Why is it important to get that immediate feedback from the formative assessments? What exactly is the problem within the classroom? Why are we not able to get successful formative assessments? How do we fix it? Were we successful? And then we're going to wrap it all up at the end. So our vision statement, I'm just going to read this to you like we do at each meeting. PLCs are a place to share ideas, concepts, successes, and failures. It's a way for different disciplines to come together for a common goal, which is the student. These PLCs should be led by each teacher within the PLC. We are a team. The only boss in the meeting should be the one who sets the time and keeps the meeting on topic and on schedule. The only non-negotiable is that we are there to serve the student and what is best to help that student to be successful, not only in school, but also out in our communities. We don't want learning to stop here in the classroom. We want them to be able to apply this out in the community, whether that's a job, whatever that may be. So what's our rationale? So much focus is given on summative assessments, whether that's an EOC, an ACT, K-Prep, end of unit exam, whatever that may be. But how we get there is even more important. Those formative assessments, those checks for understanding. So many times we just focus on that number that we want at the end, that grade. But is that really a true measure of real understanding? So what we want to do is to make sure that we're getting these consistent checks for understanding, these formative assessments, to make sure that material is being learned. And in turn, what that should do is give us better summative scores. So we can check for that understanding as the process is going on, which should culminate in then being able to apply it in a project, a paper, an end of unit exam, whatever that may be. So in my classroom, what I found was, after giving some summative assessments, some material that I thought that students had mastered, that they really knew, they really didn't know. So I had to look in the mirror to myself and say, okay, where have I quote unquote failed? Where do I need to get better at? And what I looked at was, I need better checks for formative assessment. And not them just telling me that they understand the material, but them to be able to show me that they understand the material. That way I can look at whether content needs to be retaught, whether that content needs to be, we can move on. Like, okay, we understand this. So that way when we get to our final project at the end, that true test of understanding will show that they know what's going on. And we're going to do that through some formative assessment. So again, what was the problem? Need to find better formative assessments that I can get that true checks for understanding right now as material is going on. So what's the best way to do that? I researched to try to find, like, what's the best way? What are people using for formative assessments these days? And some of you are probably familiar with some of these, and I was familiar with some of them as well. And we're not going to go into the article today. But it was on Edutopia, and it was a nice blog for the 5 fast formative assessment tools. And what I did is I researched through these to try to find what's going to be the best for my classroom, which might be not good for your classroom. Maybe it's a different type, but there's many different types out there. So what I decided to go with was Go Formative. It's easy, it's free. You can set up your own classroom. I am very fortunate I have one-to-one Chromebooks in my classroom, so students can log on, and as we're going through the material, I can just they can have that website pulled up. I can quiz them on it. We can see, we can check for understanding right then and there. And if I can see that they're not understanding it, okay, well then we're not going to leave that topic. We're going to stay on that. If they're not understanding that nicotine is the main drug found in tobacco, okay, well then we're going to go back and we're going to reteach that. Or whatever concept that be, whether that's U.S. history concept, an algebra concept, whatever your concept may be. So what we're going to do is, I brought in the Chromebooks today. We have 1-to-1 in here. And I want you to go in to GoFormative and sign up for an account. It's very easy, simple email. They're not going to ask for anything. I want you to explore the app for a minute. And I want you to kind of get familiar with how that app works. So I'm going to give you just a little bit of time to go ahead and do that. All right, I see that everybody has been able to go around and look at that. Everybody seems familiar with it. So now what I want you to do is to go to Coach Cartner's health class. Look that classroom up, and then what we're gonna do is I'm gonna test your health knowledge a little bit today, okay? I'm gonna put you on the spot. And we're gonna go through some questions, and I'm gonna have you answer those questions, okay? So we're going to take about 5 minutes and do that. All right, great. Thank you so much for humoring me and going along with that and doing that. You can see that it's a very useful tool, very easy to use. So what is my plan? What I'm going to do is, this is going to be an everyday assessment for me. We're going to use this every single day, checks for understanding. Like I said, with the 1-to-1 Chromebook, it's very easy for me to do this, but if they don't have that, they can use their phones. It's a good way to let them have that freedom to use that phone, maybe get them a little bit more engaged. On the first day of the class, what we're going to do is we're going to come in, we're going to set up the account, we're going to get used to that website in that very first day. That way, as the semester progresses, it's going to work like clockwork. Okay? So once they're used to this, they'll just come in, they'll get their Chromebooks, they'll log in, they'll log into Canvas like they do every day, and then in another window, they're going to pull up that GoFormative and be ready to go. They'll all have an account, they'll all be on the same page, and we'll be able to do that first, second week of school. Once we dive into content, we're really getting it going. So how am I going to figure out that if this is working? I'm still going to give my normal formative assessments. I'm going to give them some vocabulary, some article reviews and whatnot. And I'm going to kind of compare, keep the data from the GoFormative assessments and see how they're doing with that compared to some of the in-class work that we're going to do. But the big thing I'm going to do is look at my summative assessments from the previous semesters. And I'm going to compare it to how the summative assessments are going after using this GoFormative, and see if these true checks for understanding that are on the fly, on the go, are helping those summative scores. I use Canvas, so I'm able to go back. I can look at everybody's test scores and see how everything went. So it's going to be a very easy to compare that data and see how things are going. So what do I think is going to happen? I believe that the test scores are going to go up. Anytime you're getting a better handle on your formative assessments, data shows summative scores are going to go up. But I'm not as worried about the number as them truly understanding the material. That's the goal, is to have these students really get a grasp of the content that I'm teaching, because it's way too important. In health class, when you're talking about drugs, nutrition, when you're talking about mental health, it's very important concepts, and it's something that people struggle with on a day-to-day basis. So I want them to be able to take this knowledge and apply it to their own lives. So if we're getting a true understanding, and I'm seeing that through the formative assessments, I'm seeing it through the summative assessments, the hope is that they'll take that knowledge and they'll apply it to their own lives. The other thing I think we'll see is anytime you're implementing more technology into the classroom, these kids, it's all about technology. So I'm hoping I can grasp their attention a little bit more because they're getting to use the devices more. It's not as much of a old school type of teaching. We're on technology, we're using devices every single day. So the hope is that I will get some behavior problems will go down because I'll have their attention more because they'll want to use some of this technology. So to wrap all this up, big problem I was having is not getting those true formative checks. So using this technology, using Go Formative, and if it's another program like Socrative, that's another one that I found that I thought was really good, and there's many more out there. Find that one that works for you and try to implement it in your classroom. Very easy to work. I can see it working with math concepts, with getting a problem up there and seeing if they're getting it. For U.S. history, if they're getting those concepts, if they're really understanding the whys and why nots that are going on, and having those quick understanding checks just to make sure your class is really grasping that information. So I'll be implementing this. I'm looking forward to seeing the progress. I'm looking forward to seeing to comparing those summative scores to see if it's truly working, and I truly believe that it will. So I highly encourage you to find something that works in your classroom to get these true understanding checks, because I believe it's beneficial for everybody. So I want to thank you all for coming out today. I want to thank you for your attention. I really appreciate it. And as always with our PLCs, it's always the student in mind. So as we leave here, I hope that you can take some of this information, apply it in your classrooms, and we can just continue to help our students here at Tate's Creek. Thank you very much.